Alright, so I'm going to review X-Men Origins Deadpool, which came out this past week, and I have to say that this is honestly in a slew of the whoring that Marvel is doing with this character. This is the first good book that I've seen with him in a long time, and especially coming from X-Men Origins, this is a surprise. For those of you who don't know, I read primarily X-Men books in my pull list. Excuse me. And the Origin books are just halfway decent throwaway reads that I get. Within the last few months, I've read ones on Sabretooth, Cyclops, Iceman that were passable. And I'm sitting there thinking, yesterday when I went and picked up my pull list, I looked and seen the Deadpool book in there, and I'm like, oh, fuck, another Deadpool book. But I was like, okay, I'll read it. It's just going to be another book about the funny guy. Imagine to my surprise when I sat down and started reading this thing and find out how wrong that I really was. The book is written by Dwan Schwarzinski with art by Leandro Fernandez. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold right now. Basically what happens in this story is that there's a movie director in Hollywood going out to meet an appointment with a guy who wants to tell a story in movie about his life. And as soon as he gets there, there's like this guy come running away limping with a bloody knee. It's like, what happened? It's like, don't go in there, man, this is crazy, he'll kill you. Well, the guy goes in anyway and meets Deadpool and comes to find out that he's getting all these directors to sit down and talk with him about who could adapt his life into a movie as best as possible. And they start telling with like flashback sequences to what happened to the first two directors, because like Deadpool's sitting there drinking Jack and he's got a Glock on the table with him, and like the first guy that walked in is like, you know, it could be like this. It's like one guy on there that talks like a white guy director that talks like a black guy director. He goes like, you know, listen dog, we all go Michael Bay on this mother. I'm talking monster brawls, huge action set pieces, you versus Sasquatch, you versus Hulk, you versus... wait, we can't get the rights to the Hulk. But you know what? It doesn't fucking matter. And Deadpool's kind of trying to interject and is like, yeah, I was thinking about doing this. Like, hey, don't be like that, bro. Don't be stuck in the old paradigm. You got to shut up and let me talk. Let me go high concept on this. And he winds up pissing Deadpool off, and he's like, oh, that's not high enough for you, and he just shoots the guy in the arm. And then, like, the second director comes along and pisses him off, and he shoots him in the leg. And finally, he gets down to this director that he's talking to right now. And, you know, he said, I've had 2 disappointments. He's like, what do you got to offer? And the guy's like, you know what, I want to hear about you. I want to hear about Wade Wilson when he was a kid. And, you know, he pours the guy a drink, and they sit there drinking Jack, and Deadpool's telling his life story. And he's telling about all the times that he was going through Weapon X and all that. And while I'm getting into this book, one of the first things that I notice is that there are not the little yellow and white boxes that represent his different personalities. This is Deadpool by himself. And they're talking about him and Weapon X, and they go and they're testing him all that to see how he can withstand pain and all that. And eventually he gets to a point, and the director says, no, stop. I want to hear about you before all this, because like he makes several references to him being in a jail cell, him working with Cable, and them becoming friends. But the guy tells Deadpool to go back a little further, so he says, okay, I'll do that. And what happens is he tells that he was working as an assassin the first time, and he had a live-in girlfriend, but the director wants to go back a little bit farther, so we get 2 stories told at once. Basically what happens, like the first one where Deadpool is an assassin living with his girlfriend, he finds out that he has cancer. And in a surprisingly serious moment, Wade is sitting there and talking and says he decides to leave his girlfriend because he didn't want to be a burden to her, because she said she loves him and she's going to stick with him. But he leaves her. But that wasn't the only tragedy of his past. We get even deeper into his childhood, which is almost enough to make you want to cry when you read about this. And, you know, Deadpool keeps trying to get away from that and talk about a lot of great stuff, like he's thinking about fighting the Hulk and all that, but the director keeps pushing me. He's like, okay. and he tells about like his wanting to get to the emotional stuff. And Deadpool tells him a story about when he was probably about 5. Is that he had this little thing he used to do with his dad, where they would do knock-knock jokes. And there's a scene where Wade is standing at the door, and his dad is outside, and goes, knock-knock. Wade said, who's there? And Dad said, Cash. Cash who? Dad busts up in and just hugs him and said, Cash, you, I always knew you were a nut. And it was a nice moment. And then it gets to reveal that one day his dad walked out on him and just didn't come back, and little Wade is standing there knocking on the door, waiting for his dad to answer, but he never does. And that's that, along with what happens to his mother in this story, is something that kind of drives him over the edge. And he tries to stay off as much of his childhood as he can and all that, but what happened before Weapon X, but what happened is really sad. And you know, Deadpool goes on to explain why he uses humor in this as a defense for things. And for a one-shot, this is really good into looking at Deadpool's past. You have the movie that finally, well, I'm going to spoil this for a little bit. Deadpool likes what this guy has done because he finally decided that there's enough right here of what can go on with this movie. Now, what happens when the movie comes out is especially hilarious, because Deadpool's sitting there, and his reaction to it actually makes him go out by himself. Like, he gets totally pissed off at what the director has done to his life story, and the little revenge that he had set up there at the end of it was extremely funny. And the ending that the story has is actually something that's made me want to stop and cry, because Deadpool has to go back and confront an aspect of his past that he wants closure on. And it was just a really touching book, which I was surprised that you would get out of an X-Men Origins book, but more the surprise that you had a serious Deadpool book. If I recommend this, like, because I already know Deadpool fans like M. Gooselak and Tala Silver will have picked this up, but you know, really, go watch this thing, or not go watch it, but go read it. If you're tired of all the Deadpool being the funny guy books, like the Deadpool Corpse, the Deadpool Merc with a Mouth series, pick up this one shot. It's $3.99, and I damn sure guarantee that it's going to be worth the read.